Enjoy all your favorite sports like never before at BetMGM. Sign up using code CHAMPION and your first wager is risk-free up to $1,000. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. 21 years of age or older to wager. Virginia only. New customer offer. All promotions are subject to qualification and eligibility requirements. Rewards issued as non-withdrawable free bets or site credit. Free bets expire 7 days from issuance. Please gamble responsibly. Gambling problem? Call 1-888-532-3500.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the DTV Connoisseur podcast. I was supposed to say, like, as always, I'm joined by because I've had you guys on so much, but I want to welcome back Brett and Ty from Comeuppance Reviews podcast and the Comeuppance Reviews site.
Hey, thanks for having us on again.
That's Ty, and this is Brett speaking.
We're back once again. This is, we said some already, but what, 50 times, 65 times?
Somewhere in that neighborhood, yeah, I think.
Right, somewhere in that ballpark. I think you guys have been on, more than almost anybody. I was thinking because I was on the Comeuppance podcast that Francis Rizzo does for he's a big Val Kilmer fan, so he does it's a Val Kilmer themed one, and I was on for the third time, and so he's like, you're part of the 3-time guest club, and I was realizing that for you guys, like, guest probably doesn't really fit anymore. It's almost like collaborator.
That's
nice. I'm glad you said that, because that is kind of how I feel, and I think if our schedules weren't so different, we could almost combine our two podcasts, and it would be like one big podcast. I assume that's how it works. So it's, as always, it's a pleasure to be here and talking to someone who's a kindred spirit.
Gotta love it.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's the thing. I think one of the things that worked out for us is, I think, because Ty and I will chat on Instagram, so there's always that kind of that connection of like, oh, let's work out our schedules. But also, I think for a long period of time we had really synced schedules. It was like that Sunday window, that Sunday morning window, Eastern Time U.S. worked out for us pretty much any time we needed it, we could always do it. And so I think that made it easy too, because it is one of those things when you're trying to schedule people for a podcast is between the different time zones and the fact that nobody here is Joe Rogan and getting paid $150 million for the podcast, so we've got jobs and all that other stuff.
Jobs,
right, of course, yeah.
Right? Yeah. So it kind of worked out for a while, but I think you're right too. I think the fact that we're kind of kindred spirits, we kind of have a similar mindset, and people seem to dig it when either when you guys are on my show or when I'm on yours. It seems like
absolutely,
yes. That's definitely what I've noticed as well.
Yeah. So it definitely works out, and I guess one of the things I wanted to start with you guys is kind of an aside, which I think we're probably most known for our asides. But I was in Target the other day, and Counting Crows was playing, and I don't know how to say, because I almost wanted to say how did we let that happen, but I also kind of feel like we were a little young for Counting Crows to have let it happen, right? We weren't of the generation that that allowed for Counting Crows to be successful like that. But when I hear that song, it just I look back and I'm like, how did this happen? How did we end up with Counting Crows as this big success that they were?
Well, we should be starting a music podcast, because I have plenty of thoughts about music as well. But I have a couple of thoughts. I didn't know we were going to be talking about this. This is a new thing put on my plate. But what I would say is, Counting Crows, or some sort of I don't know this. I've never been a fan of Counting Crows. I don't have any of their albums. I'm not really that interested. But from what I could tell, they were sort of like some sort of halfway point between hippie-ish rock and a more pop rock style that was suitable for the MTV of the day. So it's like if you're kind of edging towards being into, let's say, the Grateful Dead and Fish, but you're like 13 years old and you haven't quite gone down that road, you want something a bit more palatable, which is where bands like Counting Crows and the Spin Doctors perhaps come in the 90s, which tread the line between pop rock and hippie rock.
Hippie rock, it's the best kind of rock.
So I don't know if you think I have that at all right, but you're right. We're not of the same generation as the band, and they're obviously older than us. But I do remember seeing the video for Mr. Jones on MTV and thinking it was a bit blowhardy, you know.
Was that related to the movie with Richard Gere?
It's a good question. It'd be crazy to not use it.
He was supposed to be talking about hanging out with Davy Jones from the Monkees, wasn't it?
Something about the radio.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I always thought that had some sort of reference to Bob Dylan, because doesn't Bob Dylan has a song "Me and Mr. Jones," I believe.
Oh, see, I don't like Bob Dylan. I know that's offensive to people, but
I'm not really a big Bob Dylan fan myself either. But I thought, I mean, once again, I don't know what's in the hearts and minds of the Counting Crows, but I thought that was because of who they are and their kind of pedigree, that it was sort of a Bob Dylan reference.
Yeah.
Is that what Adam Duritz was saying? Or
Yes, Adam Duritz. So I'm impressed I guess I'm impressed that you know the guy's name.
I just kind of remember
it's also somewhat off-putting that he's a white guy with dreadlocks.
I was just about to say that.
Okay.
And I was going to say, too, like, there's almost something like local record store early 90s-ish about that, isn't there? About that, like that guy behind the counter who, like I don't know, because we're going to get into talking about video store members, but when record stores started selling those kinds of like old used VHSs and stuff like that, I always feel like Adam Duritz would have been the guy who like looked at like the Dolph film and was like, oh man, I remember him in Rocky IV. Is this guy making other movies? That's so cool.
Oh, I hate when people say that. What are you up to today, Dolph? It's like, oh, I'm making a lot of movies. Shut up.
Well, yeah, I mean, to people like us, we see them as Dolph amateurs. You know what I mean? They're like the Dolph newbies who don't really know anything about Dolph except for Rocky IV. So they think that's kind of a witty, kind of clever comment, but that's really not true at all. You know, they don't even know who Dolph is, really.
Yeah,
I'm getting steamed up. I'm getting that Adam Duritz again, all over again.
Even though we don't know anything about Adam Duritz's thoughts and feelings on Dolph Lundgren, this is a total leap on our part. He might be a huge fan of seeing every single movie. We don't know. Even though he doesn't seem like the type, but what do I know?
Well, because I was making him into a record store guy, and which he technically, because he's not record store. I mean, he almost feels like record store guy made good, and I also feel too like I shouldn't be so derisive on record store guy, because in the early 90s, record store guy was actually a pretty good job. You could, that you could live off of being record store guy. He was,
I know.
I mean, I wasn't old enough to go to bars at that time. When I was a little bit older and could, you'd see slightly aged record store guy at that time at the bar enjoying a pint after the, the record store closed or the big chain came in and ran his record store out of business.
Yeah. I mean, as a record store fanatic, I definitely know what you're talking about. There is a certain type that tends to work at these places. Usually they're not the owner, even though sometimes they could be. This is usually an employee. And there's certain places that have what I call an, in quotes, record store attitude, where they have a certain attitude that it's like unpleasant, and they almost like judge you to a certain degree. And not every record store has this, only the bad ones. But I feel like he might fit into the category of someone who has record store attitude, if that's what you're getting at.
The aging record store guy, wasn't there one like that in our Connecticut place called Cutler's, Brett?
Possibly. The Cutler's is long gone. I don't know. I don't want to name names. There is a record store I could name. I'll tell you off the air that has this sort of record store attitude. But there's plenty that don't in our local area. So, it's a mixed bag.
Anything else you want to say about the Counting Crows there, man?
Yeah, no.
If you don't, I thought of something else.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think the dreadlock, the dreadlock.
Oh, the dreadlocks.
What like hipster? Because it's funny. I think we think that millennials have cornered the market on hipsters with sort of this like well coiffed hair with a nice beard, or maybe a man bun in a beard.
Yeah.
And there's sort of that look that sort of like, from that era, which probably would have been people that were born around the time that the Counting Crows were putting out, Mr. Jones or something. But really, there was this Gen X hipster that was, maybe equally insufferable, that, was born probably like in the late 60s, early 70s, like Adam Durst probably was, that had this kind of thing about them with the dreadlocks, and they were like too cool for school. And, I don't know that any of them had like a high pitched kind of whiny sound when they sang. Because that's the other part of the Adam Durst, is that, if you're ever like in a store and there's parents who have kids that they don't really have a good handle on, and the kids are just like pulling things off the shelves and they're kind of using this whiny tone, that like, I don't know, like Adam Durst, like the whole like around here, like it just sounds like, Mom, I want this toy. It kind of just, like, and it's just like, get your kid out of the store. I need to run my errands, and I can't handle this. And I think maybe that's what evoked that hearing Adam Durst kind of doing the I've been hanging around this town on whatever, where he's like doing the end where he's like, way too long kind of sound, where it's like, oh, get these kids out of the store, but it's Adam Durst singing above my head, and I'm having trouble picking out Noxzema and stuff like that.
Well, and if that's playing in a Target and there's parents with their kids in the Target, that could set off like a chain reaction, like a ripple effect, where he's whining, then they start whining, and then the kid next to them starts whining, and then it's totally like just like a domino effect.
It's like a cacophony of whining.
Right.
Yeah. But and also, there's a whole ing thing that I don't like, where things are happening in the present tense apparently, and that's really cool. Like counting crows, breaking Benjamin, finding there's a lot of finding Forrester,
finding Nemo, saving Silverman.
So if you think back to movies in the past, from the beginning of Hollywood up till that time, they didn't really do that. But at a certain point in maybe like the late 90s, early 2000s, I think people thought, hey, this is really cool. This is happening in the present tense. We're finding Forrester and we're counting the crows, because this is happening now, man. This isn't happening in the past or the future. It's happening now. So that is a little annoying. Yeah.
Raising Helen.
Raising Helen, and that's one of the better ones, because that's kind of a play on words, but still, it's that ing movies and ing bands. I think that's a trend that I think they thought was cool, but really isn't.
There's one good example to be Breaking Bad, but
yes.
It's Breaking Benjamin. Grab the Benjamin. Why are we breaking them?
You make a great point with the band too, because it's like, I think Counting Crows, they maybe one of the first ones who did that, right? Who did like that.
I think so. Yeah.
Because then it was like Stabbing Westward was another one. That was like kind of one of those. Yeah. But also, I think what happens is that the ing thing stops, and then suddenly it becomes the plural noun. The hives, the whatever. It was like
the Strokes.
The Strokes, right? It was
right.
like.
And the White Stripes and the Vines and the so-called garage rock movement of that time.
Yeah, you were too cool to be ing. You were too cool. You were way more cool than Adam Durst, right? You weren't going to have dreadlocks. You were going to have hair cut short or maybe a little bit longer. You were going to wear skinny jeans and designer clothes or whatever, and hang out with models and do all that cool stuff. Whereas Adam Durst was like this like early 90s like San Francisco, New York, like bohemian style of hipster that, you could see like the apartment with like a lot of books and posters, like kind of a small like studio that would now be cut into like 3 apartments in New York City. But at that time you could afford it.
Cost $1 million now.
Exactly, right. Exactly.
And those books are kept on bookshelves made of cinder blocks and wood planks.
Exactly. Now it's like, no, the plural noun groups, they're like, no, chic apartment in Soho or Tribeca or something like that, right? With like, real shelves, right? Like IKEA maybe, but like fancier IKEA or something like that, right?
Or Urban Outfitters, I think you're thinking of.
Right, exactly. So it was almost like the ing thing went out, and then suddenly this new, like, I don't even know what it would be now, right? Or did they just stick with the plural name?
Well, I think what they did is they dropped the. So there'll be a band like Foals, which are not the Foals, they're just Foals, and then other bands like that, which would in the past have gotten a the, but now they just kind of dropped the. Not to be
wait,
confused with
Folds?
but
What about Ben Folds 5? Is that Folds? Is that connected to Folds?
no, I think that's different. Foals are like a indie rock band from the UK.
Oh, this is not connected
Yeah.
to Ben. All right.
No, it's not
Folds 5.
Folds. It's foals, like a
Oh,
baby
oh,
horse or whatever. I'm not really sure what a
okay.
foal is.
Oh, okay.
Um,
What happened to
Yeah,
Ben
it's
Folds 5?
he came to Connecticut, Ben
Oh, really?
Folds,
Where
not
did he
too
go?
long ago. I think he played at College Street Music Hall.
Oh, that's a good guess.
So he's around. He's touring,
Good.
Yeah, I
Great.
think that's the thing, right? There's
Good.
enough of us out there that would go see. I don't know. For me, the problem is now when it comes to concerts is like the idea of standing for a long period of time is like not.
Oh
It's like,
yeah.
I need to go to like the kind of like I don't want to say the fancier place, but like definitely the sort of like the maybe on the water kind of place where they serve like wine in plastic cups and you get a nice cushioned folding seat to sit
We would
in.
get to sit down. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe a little smooth jazz. That might be kind of what I'm in. A little bit more, so,
Would you
as opposed.
go to like a 90s concert now and have like Sean Mullins and Ben Folds 5 and like
No, I saw it. Coming to the Casino is a kind of a '90s double bill. It's Collective Soul and Better Than Ezra.
Nice.
They're touring together. Two bands that I was never into, but they're touring, so you can go see them.
finally, I've been waiting for that. Wait,
Yeah,
Ezra, that was good or something? Or
Yeah, good. Which is funny because I remember being annoyed by that song at the time, and I really went out of my way to not hear the full song, like because it starts with this kind of bass line, if I remember correctly. You go,
Right,
oh,
yeah.
here comes good. Because it's just good. It's not really even
you're
saying anything.
good.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, there was a lot of that, wasn't there? There was a lot of like weird sound that like.
Well, I know a perfect example. Yeah, it's that.
Oh, the crash test dummies.
Yeah.
But just to quickly finish my story, so I,
Go ahead.
whenever I'd hear that bass line, if it came on MTV, I'd change the channels. On the radio, I would turn it off. Because I would always try to avoid it. But one day, I was at the dentist and it came on. I was like, no, because I couldn't just get up and leave with all those metal tools in my mouth. So I had to hear it. I was forced to hear good from start to finish. And when I'd gone out of my way, I always turned it into like a little game with myself. Like, I'm not going to hear all of good. And then they got me.
He got you.
It wasn't very good, right?
No, it wasn't. It was not good at all.
Yeah, I remember. I used to work third shift at the Levi's outlet in Kittery. In between, actually, it's between my senior year of high school, and my freshman year of college, and I remember we would, because we would be, working third shift. So like when they would do radio giveaways, we'd be like some of the only people calling in. So we would usually win them. And we won Better Than Ezra tickets. I won them. I was the one who, because we would take turns to see, because you could only win every 30 days or something. And so I had just started and they're like, okay, Matt, you got to call. And I won Better Than Ezra tickets at the Casino Ballroom in Hampton, New Hampshire. And I couldn't make it. I couldn't go. So
okay.
I don't know what ended up
I guess
happening.
that's not good.
Yeah.
Oh, tie.
Sorry. Well, if they're better than Ezra, I mean, Ezra's not going to be very happy.
Well, see, they shouldn't be touring with Collective Soul. They should be touring with Less Than Jake.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Well, because I think the Better Than Ezra thing, I think there was a guy named Ezra who left the group. And so they started calling themselves Better Than Ezra. I think that's where that came from. Less Than Jake, I have no idea about. I don't know if there was a Jake.
I don't know about Body by Jake.
Well, we've talked about him in great detail. Was it Firepower?
Yeah, Firepower. Yeah, he's
No, that's music.
Song.
Yeah. No, that's a song.
No, that's what I call music.
Yeah, literally.
That's what would probably happen to you, Brett, is that when Good is playing on MTV and you've got to change the channel quick, you could easily bump into a Body by Jake info.
Yeah, that's right. That probably happened. Yeah.
Right.
Then I'll get sucked down that rabbit hole for the next several hours. And, yeah.
I thought when Good came on, the batteries would fall out of the remote. Like, no.
Oh yeah, well that basically happened when I got stuck at the dentist. I wouldn't hear Good.
I would have left the dentist. I would have like.
Yeah, I was in the chair and everything. They were doing the cleaning or whatever. I couldn't just get it. I wasn't just in the waiting room. I was in the chair.
If you was playing in the waiting room, would you have left?
Yeah, I would have. I would have gotten up and just waited outside.
Okay.
It's funny because now, right, a lot of these places are playing music from the 90s. And I remember growing up, like if I had a dentist appointment, in the 80s or 90s, a lot of times they'd play like adult contempo from the 80s. And so it's like, there really wasn't anything that horrible about like Christopher Cross or like Yacht
No.
Rock or something like
Oh,
that.
they
No,
got
I like it. I love
Like
what's
the
now called
wind.
yacht rock. I love it.
Yeah,
I like the wind. It's good.
exactly, right.
Of course, what's funny is I do love almost all that music, which used to be called like soft rock or AOR, but now it's called yacht rock. And a lot of it is like very soulful and kind of R&B influenced. But Christopher Cross, the song like "I think we're gonna make it," that one.
Yeah.
It's so soulless, like it's so plastic sounding. It's just like completely devoid of any sort of like soul. And that's not surprisingly not necessarily criticism. Like I do kind of still like that song, but it's almost funny. They like took a vacuum cleaner and sucked up any sort of like soul out of that song. It's like next time you hear it, it's like the song was made in like a plastic factory.
But still, even that song, right? Like, because I've noticed this about 90s music is that like I think there's a lot of songs that I really like from the 90s, but also a lot more that a lot of ones that I didn't like. Whereas like even like that song that you're describing, the Christopher Cross one there, even if that's playing like in a situation like where you were in the dentist office where you couldn't change the station or something, I can manage it. Like I can, it's still okay. Whereas like I don't know how many 90s songs there are that it's like I got to get away from this. Like, how can I listen to this?
That was the one time.
Well, wait.
Yeah.
See, if you tried to change the station, they can't hear you because your mouth is full of the cleaning. So throw
Well,
the
I'm not in
station.
charge of the music. It like came on the radio.
No, but you throw the station.
Yeah, exactly. I'm telling you, I was stuck. And also, I have a similar story where the barking dogs for Christmas, which is like row, 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 row. It's like the barking dogs singing Jingle Bells. I guess it must have been around Christmas, and that came on, and I just kind of started laughing. But like, you have to suppress your laughs because they're cleaning your teeth and have metal spikes in your gums, and like I couldn't not laugh because it was like 10 times funnier than it normally is, because I was telling myself not to laugh, and like it was like I was like laughing while they were doing the dental work, and it was totally ridiculous.
Yeah, that happens. I think that is like just I don't know where that comes from. This idea that like if you can't laugh at something, now you're laughing even more. I mean, I had it like luckily now on the subway, like because we all wear masks. So you can hide it a little bit. But like there's a woman begging for money, an older woman begging for money on the subway the other day, and she had this very thick New England accent. And here in Philadelphia, of course, I don't hear that often. But she's like, I don't want to be ignored. I hate getting ignored. It's nothing I hate more than being ignored. Please give me some money. And I'm just thinking of like my relatives in New England who talk like that, and I'm just like trying not to laugh. Like, well, of course, you're also trying to ignore because I don't have any change. I don't want to, kind of start a whole thing with this person who's already aggressively trying to get people to give her money. But it was like one of those situations where I'm like, even with the mask on, you can kind of tell that I'm laughing, right? And I don't want to be laughing at this poor woman who needs, who's begging for money. But then she's like, I'm not going to be ignored, and I'm just like, it's like every time I would say ignored or anything with the "or" sound, it kind of set me off.
Well, I heard she went out for the Glenn Close role in Fatal Attraction and didn't make it.
I was thinking the exact same bit.
I will not be ignored.
Yeah.
There's a sketch that Saturday Night Live did back in the. She may have been on Saturday Night Live for Fatal Attraction actually, but it was they were doing this sketch called I think it's called like The Way There, and it was a game show. It was like in the early '90s of SNL or mid '90s where it was a game show where people from New England were giving directions, and you had to determine, who had the best direction. So, like, Adam Sandler was like the Bostonian type. Phil Hartman was the Mainer, and then Glenn Close was playing this woman who I have a Wicca basket store that I co-own with one of my friends. And I can't remember if it was like off of 495 in Massachusetts or something like that. But it was that exact accent that. So when you bring up Glenn Close saying I won't be ignored, it was like.
Well, it's funny, because isn't that where one of the questions is like, and talking to Adam Sandler as like the New England guy, and it's like, how many Dunkin' Donuts do you pass? He was like 500.
Right, exactly. Like
I forget what number, but it's a lot of Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah, and he was able to name which ones had drive-throughs, right? Like he was, when he was giving his directions. That's right. Yeah, and then the Phil Hartman one was always like, you can't get there from here, and then what was it? Kevin Neal was like, actually, you can, and yeah.
Which is not to be confused with a Long Island accent, which we will sometimes hear, which is, I said that's the same time. The dead giveaways, ask someone to say the word coffee.
Right.
And if they say coffee, then they're from Long Island.
Yeah, that's my wife says it that way, coffee, down here. But see, the difference for her is she'll say wooder, because that's the Philly one, wooder instead of water.
Oh, interesting. I did not know that. See, I'm not really familiar with the Philly accent at all.
Yeah, it's hard to pull off. Like I'm picking up the O sound that they do, like when they say like sodas and hoagies and go down ashore. I'm picking up that O. I do it accidentally. I'll just be like, yes, you can send that over to me, and then like I just said that, and the O gets thicker as you go south. So like there's a commuter train that you can take to go to Wilmington, Delaware, because I'll take that sometimes to watch a minor league team. And it's funny how on that commuter train, the O gets stronger as with each stop, and they pick up more people. And when you get to Baltimore has it like the thickest. I think that's where it's like it starts to turn into a Southern accent, but they have like the worst O. That O, Baltimore. I don't even know, anything with the O sound, but but here in Philly they have it some, and it's like, I got to get some sodas, or that soap. I like that soap with the nice handle and the lever like that, and it's like
interesting. Interesting.
And also, you were saying I was talking to you, Matt, on Instagram about more cheater stuff.
Yes. It's I was watching some episodes, I guess MTV2 of all channels, because I guess there's a certain point where MTV doesn't play videos, so now MTV2 can't play videos too. So they have cheaters on. Yeah, they have like a 4 block of cheaters, and it was interesting because they were like Joey Greco hosted, but Tony Grand was the one out doing the stuff. But it was exactly like you were describing it, Ty, where it's just like the name of the person. Yeah. That's the episode.
Tiffany Pebbles. I love that.
I guess you didn't get the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. Or like Mark Jones. It's like, I don't know who Mark Jones is.
Right. The music was always like so somber when they were telling their stories, which was always so interesting too, where it's like, I work all the time and I come home and she doesn't really want to have anything to do with me. So I think something's up in the background. It's like, it's almost like a creepy somber music. Like you stayed up late at night and it's like a bad, infomercial or something like that.
Well, it's no cheaters kind of is. I know we make fun of cheaters a lot on our podcast now.
There's something kind of fascinating about it. I mean,
it's fun to
and it does go into creepy territory sometimes. Like, there's that one with like this guy who dressed up like a clown or something.
Yes, was that Gomez?
No, Gomez. No, come on, give him a little credit.
No, it was the clown.
Well, maybe he was, but the one I remember seeing is like the cheater was like a clown or something.
I remember that one. I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
it's a vague memory, but yeah, and I think he was part of some clown, like, I don't know if you call it cosplay, but like he would hang out with these other clowns, and that would be like what he did. Yeah.
But I mean, we can talk about cheaters some more, or do you want to get to?
Well, let's subject at hand. We could do a whole cheaters. I've been thinking about doing like a syndicated TV episode, like McNineties syndicated TV. And
McNineties? Like, that's funny. It's called that. The McNineties? Okay.
Yeah,
it's like McMafia.
Yeah, right. No, mid-90s.
Oh, mid-90s.
Mid-90s, the syndicated TV. But I was thinking, I mean, if we did it, if I ever did it, if we did a syndicated TV episode talking about like Renegade and Highlander and some of the other ones like Viper and whatnot, I feel like you'd have to have a special segment for cheaters because, and I guess Blind Date was another good syndicated one that was just.
I think that's a classic show. Well, that's Raj Lodge, right? So it's like.
Yeah.
Wait, you had the idea for the action movie with Rob Lowe and Roger Lodge.
Because they look exactly the same. So they're twins and they're actions. They're cops. But Rob Lowe's the nerd, and then Roger Lodge is like the cool one. Yeah. That would just be a twist. Because Robert Lowe, you don't think of him as a nerd, except for Hostile Intent. Did you ever see that?
A great movie.
Is that a '90s like thriller or like neo noir?
Well,
it's a PGW. Paintball gone wrong.
Yeah. Okay. Like cyber stuff. Yeah.
Not to toot our own horn, but you might want to check out our review for that because I think it's one of our personal favorites.
Yeah. And it's really just the review writes itself when you watch it.
Yeah, it's one of those. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's basically not even our doing. It's like the review pretty much wrote itself. I was going to say literally wrote itself, but that would be inaccurate. But it basically did.
I've heard that literally has taken on the new meaning. So I guess it's officially taken on the new meaning. So you could say it literally wrote itself, and there might be some grammar hammers out there that would give you a hard time, but I've heard that, like, it's one of those things where I think we have to give up the ghost. That, like, the people on the front lines wanting that to not mean very or only to mean like the actual thing. I think it's lost. I think it's officially
you lost the fight.
Right, exactly.
So I had an idea though just now. I said grammar hammers. So what if Kelsey Grammer had his own set of tools? And he
teamed up with Fred Williamson.
Yeah. So Grammar Hammer and Fred the Hammer.
That would be amazing. I came up with that term. Well, I didn't come up with Grammar Hammer. It's actually the show called Cheap Seats that the Sklar brothers used to do.
Oh,
yeah. Remember that show? Yeah. There was one where they're watching old wrestling and they created their own wrestler called the Grammar Hammer, and he was like, I'm going to split your infinitives and stuff like that. And but I started using it because I felt like grammar Nazi, whenever you talk about Nazis and you try to like make it sound like they're, kind of funny, I don't know, like it works with the producers, but it doesn't, and I guess Hogan's Heroes it worked, but overall it's like, especially for work, my job, it just, it seemed like people putting the word Nazi in a group chat, you just never know.
You might get in trouble.
Right, exactly. So Grammar Hammer just seems to fit because you don't have to evoke any kind of genocidal regimes from the past when you do that. And so,
yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, that's when I started adopting it.
But we could talk about the subject at hand. But it's your show, so I'll let you.
He talks about cheaters.
Yeah, exactly. We do more cheaters, but yeah, I think the idea that we had for this episode is we kind of get into the meat, the meat and potatoes of it here. But you guys, I think, had me on. I think when your first kind of idea for doing sort of video store memories, and I think almost like when I was on that one, I think there was maybe a plan that was going to be more of a back and forth, and I think I was just kind of telling all my stories on there.
Which is fine. That was great.
Well, that's what it became, though, where we wanted people to come on and tell their video store memories. So, yeah, I mean, that's perfectly, what we wanted it to be.
Yeah, and I was going to say, because what it's grown into, I think, is one of the coolest things. Because you guys have a few different kind of themes that you'll do on your show. And I think that video store memories one has turned into this really great thing where it's like, it's almost like we're documenting this piece of history that we never really expected it was going to be a piece of history, right? Like nobody thought when we were going to video stores that suddenly, 20 years later, or even 15, or they weren't going to exist anymore. It's such a fascinating thing, but it's been such a really cool thing to hear people talk about those memories. And I think we talked about, well, if you guys were going to do your video store memories, you'd come on my podcast and do them, and I'd kind of be the facilitator.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you see the historical importance of it. I mean, it does seem, you're right. It's more kind of important than we even planned. Like it's almost like we're like the podcast version of Ken Burns with people telling their stories, and it's being kind of archived for history. So, I mean, not to, inflate our importance too much, but it does kind of give this sort of history that you're right, that isn't really talked about all that much. And we are trying to preserve that in some sort of form. So it has kind of taken on a bigger kind of, I don't know, I guess you'd say meaning to our surprise.
We're working on a new one soon. We're going to try to get our buddy Mitch.
Yeah.
He's listening, hey buddy. So we're working on it.
Yeah, he's like one of the last ones. We haven't done it.
Yeah, I got to talk to him, and I think my schedule's terrible, so I'm going to talk to him shortly.
But I do remember in Hamden, where we grew up in Connecticut, there were several video stores just in that town. I mean, there was Best Video where we ended up working, but there was another one called Movie Time, and time was spelled with a Y.
Of course.
And that was in Chimney Square, so called, which is like this sort of like not an outdoor mall so much, but kind of a strip mall with a big giant chimney from the past was kind of in the middle of it. And so that's where Movie Time was. And I do remember going there, and, that was when VHS and Beta were still going neck and neck. Like VHS had yet to win the format wars. So people don't always remember that, but, VHS and Beta were kind of rivals in video stores, and you could choose which format you want. And I do remember, this is going back quite a ways in my memory. I think, I don't know if it was our dad or our uncle that was trying to decide between renting RoboCop on VHS or Beta, because they had that option. Like the guy working there was like, "Yeah, do you want that on VHS or Beta?" I think same thing with Howard the Duck. That was some sort of thought, oh, which one do we want? Because
kind of remember which one you picked.
Oh God. We probably went with VHS, but I'm not 100% sure. Because there was a point in time when we had both. We had a Beta player and a VHS player. It's kind of funny that VHS won the format wars because, in the 80s, things were getting smaller. We had compact cars and all sorts of things getting smaller and smaller, and Beta was smaller. And it was supposedly higher quality, which is why they still use it in newsrooms, or at least they did for a long, long time, because the quality of Beta is supposed to be really high. But, it's kind of like Blu-ray and HD DVD. HD DVD just kind of it just died.
It's too unwieldy of a name, HD DVD. So it's still DVD, but it's HD.
Also, my theory on that is Blu-ray sounds new. It's like this is a new thing. HD DVD still has DVD in the name.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's harking back to an older thing. So people probably aren't going to want it. They want the new hot thing, which is Blu-ray.
And that's how they won.
Like when VHS went to hi-fi, right? When that was
Yeah, some of them say hi-fi. Yeah, and even like you watch something on like HBO, and at the bottom it will say hi-fi. Because certain TV broadcasts, at least on cable, were, and I think later on network, were hi-fi. So supposedly. So yeah, I remember choosing between Beta and VHS at movie time, and I think that's where I saw different box arts. I believe that was there when I sort of fell in love with box art, and certainly horror movies, and where I saw the box art for Troll. And now we think, Troll is a very entertaining movie, and Michael Moriarty does play a guy named Harry Potter, so we think it's silly. But when you're a kid and you see that, you go, ooh, what's that, a troll? And that kind of piques your interest and you want to see more. So those are some of my earliest video store memories.
I'm trying to remember some. I wrote some down. We have a Connecticut one called video store called Tommy K's. And when I was a kid, like, oh, it's very excited to go to Tommy K's. Yeah, it's the weekend, no more school. So I was only allowed to rent two things. But I was very excited at the time.
Like on a weekend, you could rent two items.
I had two items. And then one of them was, I was very excited about Daylight, when we were Stallone. So
yeah.
So it's like, yeah, Daylight's coming out. Yes. It's just like, and then, not much happens in Daylight. He's just stuck in, a tunnel. It's like, but when you're a kid, it looks cool. And I was very. And
also, there's a Connecticut connection because it has Amy Brenneman, right?
Yes. So,
who's from Connecticut, and yeah.
Maybe I should rewatch it. I don't know. I thought about it. I know. I thought about it.
That's the best answer.
I've never seen it, but from what you say, Stallone stuck in a tunnel for 2 hours doesn't sound that great.
Maybe almost kind of like Volcano. We were stuck in volcanoes and Dante's Peaks for a while in the mid 90s. So
yeah, well, that is a kind of is there a name for that where no movies about volcanoes come out for a long time, then two movies about volcanoes come out at the same time, or Steve Prefontaine or Truman Capote or whatever,
or Deep Impact and Armageddon.
Yeah.
Olympus Has Fallen and White House Down.
Right. Yeah, we could do this all day. So I think there might be a name like indie industry for that, but I don't know what it is right now.
The metaphor that I've heard, this is actually from watching Italian soccer. I used to watch Italian soccer where, I don't know if you know anything about Italian soccer, a lot of times it's like one team will score and then, or like they'll kind of play this chess match where nobody will score for a long time because it's just like nobody wants to let in a goal. They'd rather have a 0-0 draw than they would let somebody win. But then usually if somebody scores, it kind of breaks the game open. And so the description they use is that it's like city buses where it's like you're waiting forever for one and then three come by before, and I think it's kind of the same thing with these movie things where it's like, there's no volcano movies and suddenly you get three. But I guess it also probably, speaks to the lack of creativity in Hollywood that everybody's got to make something, everybody's going to cash in on an idea.
Well, now one's just flying around in capes on a green screen. If people like that, it's great.
Right.
It's like,
Exactly.
But we always make fun of the superhero movies. So, if you want to hear superhero movie talk in a more positive light, I'm sure there are podcasts for that, but you're not going to get that, at least on ours.
We're going to
just
just
talking
rib
about
it.
the Dolph Lundgren Punisher, right?
Yes.
Oh, no, yes, of course there are exceptions. And the Ray Stevenson Punisher Warzone.
Yeah.
The Tom Jane one I have issues with. But what? Well, you watched the Brett? No?
Thomas Jane? No, I've not ever seen the Thomas Jane Punisher. I've seen the Dolph Lundgren and I've seen Warzone, and I think that's it.
You can stop there.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the Thomas Jane one, the thing is, I think Thomas Jane could have been a good Punisher, but it's like the entire idea that they had for that movie was just so sautéed and wrong sauce that it wasn't going to work. That
if you ever watch it, there's something very stupid that happens in it.
Well, don't give it away, not just for my sake, but also because we're on a podcast and other people might not have seen it. But the thing is, the Punisher has to be at least somewhat gritty. And when I think of grit, I don't think of Travolta.
Well, he's just the bad guy, but he does the best he can. It's made in 2004, which is the worst year for movies, in my opinion. If you look at all the movies that came out in 2004 from Box Office Mojo or whatever, how you can find it quickly, you're all like, wow, this sucks, this sucks, this sucks.
Yeah, no, 2004 was a low point in our cinematic history.
Van Helsing was a good example.
Yeah, well, because it seems like, and maybe this also gets back to the video store thing too. But it seems like I don't know where the point is, whether it's like it's Titanic or if it's like kind of later with like the early superhero movies with like the Spider-Mans and things like that, or if it was like the Dark Knight. But there's a certain point where Hollywood starts to realize like, oh, we do better with big tent things than we do with like rom-coms that are for a specific audience and action for specific audiences. Like they just kept trying to find these big tent, like $1 billion production kind of things. And, in the 90s, it was so different, right? Because it's like you could have Jim Belushi in a noirish thriller that was going to get a limited release in the theater. And I don't think you wouldn't see anything like that in the theater today. And I think 2004 might be the watershed moment where we start to see the movement to being like big tent projects and like gritty kind of like indie things don't get the green light anymore.
But that's a good point in talking about video stores, because if you want to discover these sort of lower budget indie, whatever you want to call them, movies, most of them are going to go direct to video, and that's where you're going to discover them. So it was going to these video stores was really a treasure trove. Even back then when some of these had more of a theatrical chance. But I mean, what would come out on video was so much more interesting. And, going through all these shelves and, with these movies, like there's so many, like Ruben and Ed or Freaked or Afraid of the Dark and The Reflecting Skin and Paper House and those type of movies that were just such interesting fare. I mean, they might not be 100% perfect, but of course what is, but that's where you would discover this stuff. And that's where I discovered a lot of movies like that. And it sort of sparks your love for just going to the video store and seeing what you're going to find. Even at your best multiplex, there'll be 8 movies playing, but in a video store, there'll be how many movies? Thousands. I don't know.
Yeah, thousands of choices. That's a really good point. Because when you get there, it's like, all right, we're going to have some fun here. What are we going to find? The search is the best.
Yeah, the search, and it's all, as Motorhead said, it's often better than the catch. So,
now for you guys, when does the shift happen? Because I know, like you mentioned, like RoboCop and Daylight and some of the big budget films. When did you start to kind of get into that sort of that next tier of the video store and sort of those ones that you weren't as familiar with being in the theater?
I have my own answer, and Ty has his answer, because as you can probably tell from our RoboCop and Daylight differential, we're at different ages.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think Ty has told this story, but you might as well tell it again, because I think I know what movie you're going to mention as the tipping point. So you go, and then I'll go.
And I'll jump to another like mini story after that. So
okay.
I guess the first movie that really stood out was The Tax Man from 1999. It's Joey Pants, Joe Pantoliano, and Elizabeth Berkley and Robert Townsend, or The Meteor Man, who I knew. It's like, wait, and it was in this lenticular box. It was silver. It's like, wait, what is this? It's standing out. Really, what the heck is this? And I watched, like, this is a pretty good movie when you're a kid. It's like I want to see more of these type of movies. So every time I went to Tommy K's again, I looked for something different. So The Taxman was really the kind of the jumping off point. And then
because it made you realize, hey, there's movies like this out there.
Yeah,
like the
exactly.
Taxman.
It's like, what else is there? So there was Double Tap, which is a movie of Heather Locklear and
Stephen Ray.
Stephen Ray, and who else is in that? But Terrence
a bunch
Howard.
of people.
Yeah. And then it's like, okay, what else we got there? So, what is this sweeper we're talking about? What is Last Man Standing?
Right, and after that, there was no going back.
No going back. It's like, okay, I'm just sticking to this. So it's like, and it's about 20 years. And then this is not really related to this, but I remember going to Tommy Kate's, being excited to go to the video store because it was the weekend. And I knew that Gale Force, the movie with Treat Williams and Michael Dudikoff was coming out, the video store. So I ran. Well, not ran. But I went to the counter, talked to the guy.
You ran. Let's be honest.
Okay, I ran. And he said, "Is Gale Force in? Is Gale Force in?" Like, and he's like, "No, it got rented out, man." And it's just like, oh,
nice. Rented.
There's a couple funny parts to that story for me. One is that someone was excited to rent Gale Force. That's very unusual, I'm sure. And number two is someone rented Gale Force, so you're actually out of luck. So, I mean, the fact that those two things happened to me are very funny.
And what's also, because see, back in the early 2000s or late 90s, I won't say the word obsessed, but I was a big fan of Treat Williams. So I watched all of his movies and I knew all of his character names.
Yes, which is amazing. And also he's from Connecticut as well.
He's from Connecticut. So when Brett used to ask me, oh, what's his name in The Substitute, which is Carl Thomason, but that's all I really know now. But I remember he asked me, I knew it.
Right. Well, you were a Treat Williams fan. And, a lot of times we would say a certain movie is a treat to watch.
Yes, they are a treat to watch. Substitute 3 is a really great movie. You got to rewatch that one, Matt.
Substitute 3, yeah, I think I did do that one for the site, like when I first started the site.
Yeah.
And I think some of those 07 ones I probably should like revisit, because a lot of times I was just doing them from memory, or I was like, I DVR'd it and watched it and then like tried to grab images, which sometimes I was grabbing images from other people's sites without knowing that that's kind of not something you're supposed to do or something.
No hot linking.
Right, exactly. So, but yeah, I mean, Treat, I think, the Gale Force thing kind of blows my mind because I remember my friend and I, and when we were in high school, we were big fans of Bad Taste, the Peter Jackson movie.
Oh yes, yeah.
Yeah, and of course that one was never out, but we used to reserve it so that we could, as like kind of like on ceremony or something like that, we would like call up and make sure it was reserved for us so we could have it, and they would laugh at us like, oh yeah, of course no one's gonna take Bad Taste. But the idea that at the time we were doing it as a joke, but the Gale Force story tells me that like no, we were actually smart to do that because you just never know what's gonna get rented.
Yeah, exactly. You would have been disappointed one day when. One day you go to get Bad Taste and it's not there, and then what? Just for me, it's it's very simple, which is just I don't know what it is, and there's certain types of people that are drawn to horror and cult movies, and I'm one of those people. So I would just walk to the horror section and see all the horror box art. And I remember renting the first Evil Dead. I believe it was a Thorn EMI VHS, and again, there was absolutely no looking back from that because, Best Video had a horror section and a cult section, and I would bounce back and forth between those. Also, they had sections for director, so each director would get their own section, these little mini kind of sections. And, most of it was, fairly highfalutin stuff. They'd have the Fellini and Truffaut, and I did watch those as well, of course. Sort of like almost Kurosawa, which is sort of a really good grounding to have. Now I pretty much just watch horror and exploitation, but that is good to watch, and action, of course. But that is definitely a good grounding, and they'd have these sort of high tier directors. And they also had a Dario Argento section, and I remember seeing the box for Dario Argento's World of Horror, which is basically like a sort of a compilation, like a greatest hits from these Argento movies. I watched that, no going back, lifelong diehard Argento fan from there, and then going into other Italian horror directors. So just, so those are two examples I can think of right off the top of my head, and just constantly going right to the cult and or horror sections when I was a patron of Best Video. So that stands out to me as that, but also I do remember when Best Video was in its older location, which it actually moved back. But when it was there the first time,
right, moved back,
which is I don't know how often you get that, but there was in the window, kind of like when you first walked in, I would always see the box for the movie Housekeeping, which is a movie directed by Bill Forsyth from 1987. I have not seen the movie, but I remember the box art clearly because it's kind of like this lightly surrealistic piece of artwork about this with this woman who's sort of like in her living room, I guess knitting, I believe, but she's ankle deep in water. And it's cool. It's cool art. And I do remember passing that and seeing the box, but never renting the movie. But I do remember passing that many, many, many times on the way into Best Video.
Yeah. Now, one of the things you were talking about the different video places, and I want to get into your time that you guys did working at a video store. But did you kind of go through a period in maybe the late '90s, early 2000s where the kind of the mom and pop stores went out of business, and that some of the big chains like Blockbuster and Movie Gallery kind of took over or started to sort of kind of become the only game in town?
I'll let Ty kind of field this because by the time that happened, I was never really a big patron of Blockbuster or Hollywood Video. We didn't really have Movie Gallery too much. I don't think Ty in Connecticut.
It was New Haven, I think, but it was just, but it was kind of far and not.
It wasn't convenient for us to get there. But I just by that time, I don't know. I was either still working at Best Video or buying DVDs at that point, and I had no interest in going in a Hollywood Video or a Blockbuster because I always saw them as these, once again, much like Christopher Cross songs, kind of soulless places to go. So I remember when that happened, which was sort of like in the 90s, I guess, towards the later 90s. But I just was never really a patron of those stores. I never had a membership at either Hollywood or Blockbuster Video.
Well, I used to get a membership when I was at Blockbuster and Tommy Case and Best Video. So
yeah.
Well, I have a Blockbuster memory, which was not really about a movie, but it's about a video game because I used to play video games as a kid too. So I wanted to play Wu-Tang Shaolin Style because I heard about the game. And at Blockbuster, they wouldn't let you have the booklet to the game. You have the game, but you can't have the booklet because the booklet has the cheat blood codes.
Oh.
So it's you can't have the booklet. You can rent the game, but no booklet. And it's well, sorry, I'm going to go on the internet. So it's you have the internet in 1999. So I typed it in and I found it. It's I got your blood codes right here. It's just
buddy.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah.
That's what you should have sent to him.
Well, it's I beat you. So it's no, but
much like Henry Rollins did to RZA in the game. Or didn't that happen with these?
Well, no, that's Def Jam Fight for New York.
Oh right, sorry.
Yeah, Henry Rollins beats up Dr. Dre or Snoop Dogg or whatever. I think it was Maya versus Henry Rollins. Trina versus Henry Rollins.
Okay, all right. So moving on.
I forgot about that game. I didn't know Henry Rollins was in it though.
No, he's a playable character in that game. Yeah.
I only used Henry Rollins. So it's okay, maybe Fat Joe.
Was Big Pun in the game or just Fat Joe?
I think Fat Joe. He was hard to beat. I have to say, Fat Joe, because he had this power move or something. I can't beat Fat Joe.
Even with all the blood codes that you cheated on the internet to get.
Yeah, sorry, B-Buster employee, I won. But and then, do you remember playing that game, Matt? The Wu-Tang Shaolin Style?
I never played it. It was another one that I saw the commercial for, and I never played that one. I remember seeing it though.
Well, see, I go back so far that I remember renting Nintendo games at Best Video, and I think Tommy's as well.
Do you remember which
the
one?
Original 8-bit? Yes, I do remember renting. I can remember two. I regularly rented Nintendo games, but I remember two. I remember renting 3D World Runner, and I remember renting TNC Surf Designs.
I remember that one too. Remember my mom I had to give up because I was just so frustrated with TNC Surf Designs, and my mom heard me getting mad about it, and she was like, "Why don't we just return it and you can get something else or do something else?"
Yeah, well, a lot of video games, Nintendo games, are very hard and frustrating. For those that might remember, it's split into two kind of modes. You can do surfing or skateboarding, and the surfing is impossible.
Yeah,
Like, so I would imagine you were doing the surfing version where you're getting frustrated. But the skateboarding's tough too, but it's more fun. I think I would always do this skateboarding.
Yeah, I was still like constantly with the skateboarding. I was hitting like rocks and stuff and
Yeah.
falling on my face. It was just like,
And now I own both of those games. So if you're ever in town and you want to play them,
I probably could handle them better now than I did like at 9 or 10.
Yeah.
The one I remember the best was so we had this local video store, and I cannot remember the name of it now. It's currently a health food place in my hometown, but it was one of those ones that until the very end they had the nail with the receipts with the carbon paper. They held out. I remember because it was actually my friend's dad he owned a computer company that installed computers in a lot of the companies in our town. And he was joking about how that guy would just he refused to ever computerize his computer system or whatever, his rental system. But I remember Super Mario 2 came out, and that was like the big one, right? Like everybody wanted to rent Super Mario 2. And if you rented it on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, you got it for 2 days. And I remember my friend reserved it so I couldn't get it. And I, of course, I went there to get it, and they were like, "Oh no, somebody's already got it," and I had to settle for Friday the 13th, which was like another one of those extremely hard games. That was just
impossible.
I couldn't. We used to joke because there's a part in the game where because I think it was my buddy and I were playing it because another friend that was the one that got Super Mario 2, but we were playing it, and there's a part where it says like Jason wiped out the kids. And so we just thought it was hilarious. It's like, 8 or 9 year olds would be like, Jason wiped the kids' butts,
Yep, that sounds about right.
That's hilariously childish.
But imagine if you went to Ghosts and Goblins or Fester's Quest or one of these notoriously impossible games, then what do you do?
Yeah, they were just so, I think that was the thing. Like, there were certain things you could do. Like, I remember there was the Punisher Nintendo game where if you had the NES Advantage and you put it on slow, it would slow the game down so that you could shoot all the guys as much as possible. So there were some that you could get away with, then of course there are ones like Super Mario 3 that or Super Mario 2 even, that you could just play them and kind of make it happen. I think Mega Man was another one that, I think Mega Man 2, one of them, maybe it was Mega Man 2 or 3 that was like really easy. Like it was made easy on purpose because I think Mega Man 1 was so difficult. So like there were some that were easy, but then there were the ones that were just like, what were they thinking when they made this game? And I think like Silver Surfer is the one that's always kind of held up as like the standard of like horrible, like how difficult it was. So
that's getting into angry video game nerd territory there.
Exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, the good thing about that though is it's still better to have rented them at a video store than just to buy them. Like, because if you buy it, because what's interesting is our friend Brendan has pointed out, video games have always been the same price. They've always been about like $65-$70. Like Nintendo games were $70. Super Nintendo games are $70. Probably the Xbox games are $70. Video games have maintained that sort of price. So to go into a Toys R Us or a Child World and buy Ghosts and Goblins, as I unfortunately did, you learn the hard way that now you're stuck with a game that is
2 shots and you're dead.
Yeah,
it's like, you can barely get past the first level.
Yeah, that was the thing, right? Because it was like there were like cheaper games that were like $20, and that was like a big thing to like get these like $20 ones that would be like older games or things like that. But then you're right, like it was like if the new Super Mario 3 came out, like that was like $50 or $60 in 1988 money, which is like,
right.
It's like, $50 is like how much it costs to get DoorDash now in modern money, but that's, that would be like a grocery shopping trip back then,
Oh yeah, and we weren't rich, that's why I didn't have a lot of video games back then because they were just too expensive. And then when I would try to go for a cheaper game, the game would be a complete dud too. Like this game Star Voyager, which is not a well-known game, but oh my god, it's terrible.
Is it like Silent Service?
Yeah, it's like the space version of Silent Service. It's like this game where like nothing happens. You're just kind of like floating through space, and you're lucky if you get like an asteroid that flies by. Like it's just the most unexciting game you could imagine. And then I got burned again during the Genesis years with Shove It.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm going to buy this myself. You don't have a job, you don't have any money, you're a kid. I thought I would just buy Shove It because there actually isn't a Genesis game called Shove It, which right there is kind of a red flag because it's about a guy in a factory who is pushing boxes. That's the concept.
Great 90s kind of title, kind of.
It's in your face and awesome and extreme.
Yeah, this nihilist title, Shove It.
Yeah, so they turn a box pushing game into something potentially cool, which it's not. And then by that time, I was off video games and pretty much forever. So, you learn some hard lessons in the video store.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? I think was that back then, I mean, we always joke about this sort of like, growing up sort of like in the 80s and in early 90s where it was like things were tougher or like, but yeah, like the video games at that time, I think were part of that it was just like, yeah,
well,
the
true.
game.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say yeah, remember there was no internet, so you couldn't. I remember the first time I went and played. I think it was Mortal Kombat 3, at the arcade, and got all of the moves off the internet. It was like an FAQ, and remember the printers that had like those little things on the side with the holes.
Yeah.
The printer paper.
Oh, dot matrix printers.
Yes, exactly. I remember printing off the whole thing at my buddy's house with like all the moves, going to the arcade and being like the most popular person there because everybody's like, "Whoa, you've got all the moves, all the finishing moves, and everything," And it's like, it was like
all
this
the
crazy,
moves, Matt.
right? Exactly. It was like this crazy idea, and now it's like you just take for granted that like anything you're playing, you can just go on the internet and somebody's either like done a whole walkthrough on YouTube about it or whatever, and so. Yeah, it is kind of fascinating how back then it was like you rented a video game, you had it for 1 or 2 days. There was no way to figure out how to do anything. It was almost I don't know if this happened for either of you guys where you'd rent it multiple times to kind of figure out like how to make it.
I don't remember doing that. It is possible, but I also did have a subscription to Nintendo Power.
Yes,
and Nintendo Power was pretty much your only hope if you wanted any sort of help with these games. Because like you said, obviously it's pre-internet. All we had was basically Nintendo Power. And then later on, there were other video game magazines like Game Pro and Game Informer, which Ty knows more about. I just had Nintendo Power for a time. And that's pretty much all you got in the way of help. Otherwise, you were on your own.
Well, that's the thing. You had to roll the dice. Either by movie or game at the video store.
Yes.
Well, that is true. Well, that's the thing about the video stores. I think you touched on something here, Ty.
Yeah. Okay.
There's an element of risk that comes with renting stuff at a video store, movie or video game, and that becomes addictive.
Yes, and you might get a reward. And even the dud's kind of a fun memory, too.
Yeah, and I think that sort of risk-taking, that roulette spinning of what you're going to get, it becomes addictive, and you want to go back and back and back. Because, this time I'm going to get a big hit, So exactly. That alone is like a draw to the video store.
Well, because, it's like nowadays, right, if like let's say you're having a movie night with a bunch of people, and you go on to Tubi, let's say, and you're like, okay, let's watch this movie on Tubi. If you're 10 minutes in, you're like, okay, well, let's turn this off and turn on something else if it's not good. Whereas like, when you rented it, even if you only paid a few dollars for it, which a few dollars back then still was, especially if you're a kid and you don't have a job.
$20 today.
Yeah. Well, that reminds me of a memory, but I'll let you finish your thought. But I have two memories that just kind of popped in. But sorry, go ahead.
No, but you're right. Like we kind of take for granted now that everything is at our fingertips, whereas like everything was there in the video store, but the one you picked was kind of a big deal because that was like you weren't just able to just go back and grab another one, right? Like you can now. You
had one chance.
Right. Exactly. Right. It's your hard-earned money. You're basically gambling,
right.
And so you could watch as many times as you want. Actually, all right. So I got a couple here. One is I had a sleepover with at my friend's house, which I think I might have mentioned on our podcast. We watched American Ninja 2. That's what's the one where they get on the beach where they're fighting on that beach? I remember. Yeah, we rented that at a video store and watched it like a sleepover. I do remember that. Also, when you mentioned the thing about $20, I was thinking, they would sell the old posters, which I'm not even sure is even legal. But because they're the promotional posters they get for free, and they'd sell them at a big markup. And I remember in the window of Best Video in the old days, they had a poster for Clockwise, that movie with John Cleese where he's like stuck in a clock.
Yeah.
And also Serve Nazis Must Die.
Yes. Great one. I
do remember they had posters in the window for that, but the one they were selling that I had to have was Army of Darkness.
Yes. Yeah.
And I do remember getting that, and I do still have it somewhere. And so they got it for free. I had to pay, or someone had to pay $20.
I know you paid for it with your own money, with like an allowance or something. Because I remember very happy with getting that. Like, hey, I got the poster. I remember.
Yeah, because I was obviously worried someone else would grab it.
Hey, but you have it.
As a kid, that's what you're worried about, that someone else is going to grab your Army of Darkness poster. And so, and going back to Matt, the video store, you were talking about that was not computerized.
Yeah, go ahead.
Best Video is only like one step up from that. Even I think to this day, because they use a DOS based 80s program called Take One. Do you know about this?
No, this sounds great though.
Yeah, it's like it's a computer program developed, I believe, in 1983 or 4.
Yeah, 84. So 84 to 2006 when we were there. So it's like
they're still using it.
Huh?
It's like, and so it's like it's a computer program meant for video stores, So, and that's what they were using. So yeah, that video store might have not had anything computerized, but Best Video only had one step up from that, which was a non-internet based program called Take One, where you could check stuff out, you could see what was rented out, you could look up various things in it, but it was basic 80s computer technology, which they used throughout the 2000s. They might still be using it for all I know. It is very functional. It's kind of all you need to have a video store. I think Ty should get it for home. For his house, because Ty's collection is so huge. I think he should get Take One so he could know what he's got. But
I gotta redo it again. I mean, that's the thing.
But anyway, so I wanted to mention the Take One program, and I don't know if there's anything on the internet people could look up about that, but that's the program we used, that Best Video used, I should say.
Go
ahead.
Ty.
No, go please, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead, because I was gonna, go ahead.
No. Okay, I love the go ahead bits. It's I remember on Take One, we had to look up someone's account a long time ago, and all the guy rented was The Hitman with Chuck Norris.
Oh, that's a good memory. I don't even think I knew that.
Oh, you haven't? Oh, well, yeah.
Well, if I did, I don't remember.
He loved The Hitman. He loved it. So he rented like 15, 20 times, like Hitman.
What? That many?
It was over 10.
Oh, wow.
It's like, well, Hitman is pretty good, like Drop Dead, It's just
it's definitely one of Chuck's best, but still, I mean, at that point, just buy the movie.
Yeah, that's what we thought. Just buy the dang movie. Just buy.
That's good. This is a good segue, because I was going to ask you guys, because you guys have also worked at so was Best View, is that the one that you worked at?
Yeah, we did.
Yes.
And so I mean that one story you just told there was great. So you could kind of see in the computer program how many times someone rented something.
Yes. You can look in their file. Yeah.
And also you can tell how many times something has rented just in general. Like I remember Ty, was it TNT?
TNT. Oh yeah, TNT with Olivier Grunier.
Oh yeah. Nice.
And it got like negative rentals. It was like, because it shows like how much it cost to buy and how much profit had come in. And it was like, that was one of the lowest, I don't know if you go, one of the biggest differentials, like it cost whatever, I don't know how much it cost, but it didn't make even close to its money back.
I think the opposite was that we somehow got a Norm named Norm to make us some money. I think that was about $100. I remember that.
But then you can see the older tapes, like Magnetic Video, I think is one of the first VHS companies. In the old days, and this is a cliche, but it's true, that they made stuff built to last. Like the older VHS tapes were just built better. They used high quality, heavy plastic and better components. The later VHS tapes are made of like cheap plastic.
Well, that's the thing. That's what happened to my my third row center film movies. Booze Can and
Two Left Shoes.
Two Left Shoes. Sorry, Two Left Shoes. Both Two Left Shoe tapes I had were broken when I first got them. Like, I can't be a coincidence that they're cheap.
And those are later 90s things. Whereas I remember The Graduate, which they probably had since it came out on VHS the first time in like the early 80s, possibly even late 70s. It rented and did nothing happen to the VHS. It was perfect. It just kept renting, and that had earned thousands of dollars, if I remember correctly. It was just a workhorse of a tape.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing you bring up, because when AFI released their like 100 movies in 100 years list, my buddy and I wanted kind of went on, I don't know if you call it a mission or something. It's one of those things where we wanted to watch as many of the ones we hadn't seen before on there as we could. And it was interesting because a lot of them were old tapes like that, that you just, they'd been around for a long time. You know, the trailers were old. On the other hand, there were also some that were in really bad shape, and you could just tell because nobody was renting them that they didn't know they were in bad shape because, you know, when was the last time somebody rented animal crackers or something like that, you know, that, you know, duck soup. But
Right.
yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that because that's a kind of a thing I remember, like in the early 2000s, my buddy and I kind of, you know, seeing some of those tapes again.
I think we had possibly mentioned this before, but then when Anchor Bay, kind of before they became a big name in DVD, they would do those VHS tapes with sort of rounded boxes. You know, they weren't a straight or rectangular. They were like smoothed over, and they looked a bit more, I guess you'd say, futuristic, or a bit more modern, and that's like right before DVD took it, you know, took it over.
No, wait, I don't mean to cut you off, Brett.
No, I'm done.
I mean, Matt, you were saying about the video store. You wanted to ask us another question?
Oh, well, no, yeah. I mean, I guess, yeah, because so that was the place. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think like it's kind of a unique thing, right? For like, 'cause I never worked at the video store before, so I kind of only see it as the person. You know, I remember I was kind of seeing a girl who worked at Blockbuster in the late 2000s.
There's a dream.
Right. It was kind of like
That is
towards
the
the end
dream.
there. And of course, at that time, you know, she was kind of just, you know, when they were close to checking out at that point, you know, it was like, you know, it's
Well, you
kind
gotta
of like
work.
that point where like kind of like the apocalypse, right? Where it's like, you know, everybody's waiting for the asteroid to come in a movie. You know, you kind of just know it's closing. Or I guess like, you know, Last Days of Saigon, right? Everybody's getting out of bed.
They're escaping the Blockbuster on the roof with the helicopter.
Exactly.
Well, she has to wear the Blockbuster pants.
Well, I was going to ask about that. Did this girl say anything about having to wear something called Blockbuster pants, or for our UK listeners, Blockbuster trousers?
Yes, she did actually. I mean, she talked about like a lot of the things, like turning on movies. Like there'd be certain ones that they'd want you to turn on, and it was kind of like, okay, after a certain point, you just kind of turn on whatever else, right? Like you kind of like, but you know, like because Blockbuster usually would have these deals, right, with bigger distributors. So it's like, oh, you've got to play this whatever movie on a loop just constantly, and so it would be like the same movie would just be on the whole time, and then they would get to a point where they could maybe swap it for something else. But yeah, and I think it was also too kind of at that point where, you know, Netflix was getting to that point, right? And Blockbuster was trying things to, you know, get around it, like the different they were doing their own subscription service and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah, and I think it just made life more difficult for them to have to like deal with all these kinds of things. And I think for her, because it was a second job, you know, she had another job that it was kind of her main job. She just kind of just said, okay, you know what, this isn't worth my time. It's not, you know.
Yeah.
That did remind me, and we did do an episode that focused on this on our podcast, but the Stop and Shop video store.
Yes.
I do remember because Ty, you said you had memberships to all these places. We also had one at the Stop and Shop video store.
We did. I remember going there. Now it's not the stupid bank.
Yeah, everything's a bank.
When I look at the bank, it's like
anything that used to be something cool is probably a bank.
The next time I go to the bank, maybe I'll ask. Maybe if there's like an older lady,
good luck with that.
If she'll remember the video store, I'll try to remember. But I don't like.
But I do remember going to our Stop and Shop, and for those who might not know, that's a local sort of New England grocery store chain. They had a video store, a very kind of small one, but an interesting one, because I remember they had, I said this on the episode, I think, I remember seeing they had blood-sucking freaks. And so, like, you could, you know, buy your, you know, rice-a-roni and cantaloupes, and you pass by and say, wait, blood-sucking freaks is, like, right here.
Right next to the damn macaroni. It's
and so I also, you know, they had more mainstream fare. I do remember they had Splitting Heirs, that movie with Rick Moranis. And they had...
Anyway.
You know, he's like an heir to like a fortune. I've never seen it. And then also A Talent for the Game, which I believe is a baseball drama with Edward James Olmos.
That's a good memory.
I believe they had, well, those are the only three I can remember. But Bloodsucking Freaks was definitely a standout. I believe it was a big box, if I'm not mistaken. So they did have big boxes into the 90s, and you know, they had movie posters in the Stop and Shop window, and I'll let Ty pick up this part of the story.
Okay, I know. I've said this before.
It's kind of weird to think now when you think at a grocery store they had a video store, and they had video games. I remember they had Genesis and Super Nintendo games as well. That you'd go to Stop and Shop and they'd be movie posters in the grocery store window. Oh, and sorry, one more thing, Ty. I remember going to Wall Bombs, which was sort of the competitor to Stop and Shop, at least in Connecticut. They had a video store that had VHS and Beta, and they had Ghoulies. I believe it was on Beta, and it was like a wall of movies right next to where you check out. So I remember being at Wall Bombs and looking at this wall of movies and seeing Ghoulies, and that's the only one I can remember, but that did stand out for me. But Ty, go ahead.
I'm going to say Wall of Ghoulies, which also would be a good idea.
It's also a great band that sings that song Mexican Radio.
Oh, the thing about the poster. Okay,
Yeah.
so sure. So I'm a little tot. It's 93, so I guess I can do the math. Let's see. 7 years old. So I'm 7 years old, going to the store. I want to get my fruit by the foot. I walk in and
your Dunkaroos.
My Dunkaroos. So it's trying to avoid all the getting the stupid Cookie Crisp. I was thinking of Cookie Crisp. But anyhow, you walk in. Here I go. There's this poster that scared me. It was giving me difference. Jason Goes to Hell, the final Friday. If you remember the poster, it's this worm monster.
Right. Yeah.
Fire. It's like, I got scared.
And that is funny. That does bring up a good point, which is, do movies like that, horror movies or what have you, does that mix with sort of the general people going to the grocery store?
I think I remember at Walmart a long time ago, they were playing Titanic. It's like, here it comes. If you've seen Titanic, Brett.
Which I have not.
We haven't seen Titanic yet.
No, I've never seen it.
But you probably know the scene where Kate Winslet is, not having is topless. You probably have heard the scene. It's like, they're going to play that part soon at Walmart.
And at Walmart of all places, which is very sort of
hot. It's like,
Well, maybe was that around the time when they re-released it in the theater in 3D, even though the movie wasn't shot in 3D?
It wasn't shot in 3D. It's 3 hours. That means you put those glasses on for 3 hours. Your eyes are destroyed. Why would they do that? It's like, unless they're in cahoots of Pearl Vision.
That's pretty good. Well, because I think the thing too about the sort of like the Jason thing in the grocery store, because it reminded me also, somebody had posted a picture of like a flyer for a drugstore in the early 80s that showed like, remember those plastic Halloween costumes? It was like the plastic mask with the rubber band, and then it was like a plastic bag of a Superman. Yeah. But they also had those really scary rubber masks, right? With like the big hair and like the ugly faces and all of that.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I remember as a kid, like, you go to the drugstore, my mom would be like, and I'm like, I can't go down that aisle. I don't think I was that calm about it when I would say it to my mom, like, I can't go down that aisle. But the idea was, as a kid, you were expected to do this stuff. It was like not considered like scary to have. It was like, okay, if you're afraid of the Friday the 13th poster at the grocery store, that's your problem, not
right. No, I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm scared. I'm a little tot.
Right, exactly. Right, like nowadays you'd look at that and be like, you shouldn't be scaring kids. Like I remember my parents loved to watch those those true crime TV shows where they just talk about these horrific murders. And I remember I was at my parents' house when my nephew was there. He was like 3 or 4. And my dad's watching this show where they're describing this grisly murder. My nephew's just sitting there like taking it in, and I'm like, Dad, you can't watch this with him there. But my dad's mindset, I think that was the mindset that like a lot of parents had, was, they don't really know what that is. They don't get what that is. They But it's like, no, this is grisly murder that a 3-year-old is listening to being described in great detail on TV. Like, no, let's turn on like Yo Gabba Gabba or something like that.
Which in many ways is worse than just like a fantasy, a fictional thing like a Friday the 13th or whatever. I mean, the real murder, maybe isn't the best programming for children, but you're right. It's a different mindset, a different generation.
Well, there's Yo Gabba Gabba and there's Gullah Gullah Island, if you remember that.
Both of which are very horrific. No, I've never seen either one.
I think there was a song. I mean, and our cousin Sarah would know the song, but for Gullah Gullah Island. So it's like,
I kind of remember that one. I know that I remember hearing it, or like, the idea of a Gullah Gullah Island.
Are you sure you're not thinking of Under the Umbrella Tree?
Well, that's also a great. Did you ever see that show, Matt?
No, I don't remember.
I think that's after our time.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I know. You look it up. You'll enjoy it.
Well, you may or may not. That's just a warning.
Just look up the opening part. It was very childish, but you can't help but enjoy it.
But yeah, so I mean, we had starting with movie time and best video, kind of going to the Stop and Shop video store, and then kind of ending up at
Tommy K's in
Blockbuster.
between.
Tommy K's was in between, and I do remember Tommy K's was a local chain, and I do remember going to one, renting Life Stinks, the Mel Brooks movie.
Oh, yeah.
Did you
But
enjoy the movie?
did I enjoy it? I think at the time I did. I mean, it's very easy to like Mel Brooks stuff. So he's definitely a lovable character. So I'm sure I did. But let me think.
He has a funny
but
voice.
you're right, Matt. It kind of ended with a whimper and not a bang, as far as, it then ended up at these heartless chains. And then Ty, when you were working at Shaw's, which was near Blockbuster as it was closing, yeah, I think you were still renting stuff up to the very end. And they had
about 2010.
Who Stole the Potato Salad? What was that movie with Urkel?
Okay, let me double check the title. So give me a second here. Okay.
Yeah, it was like a big rental they had there,
I think it's Who Brought the Potato Salad, but the potato is spelled Potatoe or something.
Yeah, and he's like pointing to the extra E, like, hey, this shouldn't be here.
Yeah, what's this potato salad going on, Urkel?
So I remember that as one of the last gasp things, which is kind of sad, really, but I do remember that. And I remember, the dividers that they would use, like these plastic dividers that they would just use throughout the store. They were selling them.
Yes.
So like,
I do remember that.
There was like, if you want some plastic dividers from Blockbuster, you, rather than give them away or throw them out, they're selling them. I don't know who would actually buy those, but I do remember that. And I remember thinking, well, that's kind of sad.
Should have bought the shelves.
Yeah, well, you need the shelves.
No, I need shelves. For
I
goodness
know
sake.
you could. I know. Well, that's the thing in your case, right? Because I think you have in the past sold some of your VHS, and then you're like, oh, I like, what was it? Was it Final Justice or Final Sanction that you sold?
Yes, you mean the thing with the Robert Zadar movie?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. It's a Final Sanction or Big Sweat. I think it was unfortunately.
No, both. I think.
Oh, because at the time it was like, this movie wasn't very good. I want to keep it.
Big Sweat is getting a Bluray release, so you'll be able to get that back. As far as Final Sanction, is that movie?
Yeah,
it's a Final Option.
Wait, Final Option. Wait, the Final Option's the British movie.
Oh yeah, no, that's a really good movie.
No, I have that. I have that in my collection. And then there's the Final. Oh, what's it called? Hasselhoff.
Oh, a Final Alliance.
Yeah, that movie's awesome. Did you see that, Matt?
No, I think it's on Tubi. I'll have to take a look.
Oh, you should. I really think you would like that. It's definitely Hoff at his best.
Yeah, it's on Tubi. Perfect for Tubi.
Okay.
You'll really enjoy it.
He has a pet jaguar. It's made in Italy. He fights middle-aged punks. I mean, it's definitely you're gonna. I definitely think you will get a lot out of that one.
Okay, I'll take a look at that. I mean, you never go wrong with the. Oh yes, there it is. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's a Tubi. I think it's in my Tubi list actually.
Yeah,
it's been removed because now it's not showing up. But
okay.
I'll definitely take a look at that. Yeah, it's funny you guys were talking about the grocery store thing, because I think we take for granted now that it's just like a red box thing outside of the grocery store. But thinking, I mean, I remember my mom a lot of times she'd play lottery tickets, and it was like the same counter. So it'd be like you'd get your lottery tickets at this big counter out back, or if you had to return, like you bought milk and it turned out it was spoiled, but you bought it, you'd go.
Oh, right, the customer service area.
Right, yeah, it was the same place as where you'd bring up, like, I think initially they actually had the tapes they did like the thing where you take the tape and you leave the box. Like the boxes in front of the tape.
Like it's behind the case, right?
Right. I think they did that initially, and then I think because this was the Shaw's actually near us that we rented.
Oh yeah, the Shaw's cool.
Yeah, so they Shaw's is the chain. I think it kind of makes it up that far, and then down here in Philadelphia, it's the same company as Acme. So it's like the same. I guess
whatever. The
reason.
Roadrunner and the
Right, exactly. Yeah. So when you're in there, you have to be careful for anvils and rockets and things like that. You never know what could shoot.
That would be kind of funny, actually. Right. These booby traps at the grocery store.
Right, exactly.
Well, it'd be like Stu Leonard's. Stu Leonard's is like a grocery store, but wacky stuff goes on.
You pick the wrong Pop-Tart and you get blown up. It's just like
Right. it's like you pull the pop, you're like, why is this Pop-Tart stuck? And you don't realize that it's attached to like a spring, and the the boxing glove on the spring hits you in the face, and you're like, oh man, what are they doing? I fell for
you
that.
see stars, and there's like a little bump on your head.
The birds are tweeting around my head. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess they don't really have theme grocery stores like they used to,
They sure didn't.
Now things have to be like Whole Foods, and it's all like woke and expensive. They should have something like a Stu Leonard's, which is something in Connecticut, which is like, it's a grocery store, but it have these like animatronic big things that are like moving around, from what I remember. It was crazy.
It's funny you mentioned about Whole Foods. Oh, go ahead, Tuck.
I'm just saying that the Stu Leonard's have a petting zoo.
They might have, yeah.
And there's also
in the grocery store.
In the grocery store, or maybe outside the grocery store. but
they had like hay bales that were like in the store or something.
Welcome to Grocery Talk. Then we got one more grocery store thing, a place called Everybody's in Connecticut, and the tagline is Everybody's where you're somebody.
I like that. It's funny you mentioned Whole Foods, because the Shaw's near us, that my mom will love this Shaw's, because it was the other big chain in kind of northern New England is Market Basket. I don't know if you have any of those in the Connecticut.
I've heard of Market Basket.
Yeah, we've heard, not near us, but I think sort of, or I know they're in Massachusetts and elsewhere.
Yeah, that's kind of the big place. And so like there was one in New Hampshire that's been there forever, in like Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and then across the way there was another strip mall that had the Shaw's. And because the Shaw's was more expensive than the Market Basket, my mom, she was willing to pay the extra price because it was less crowded. So she just like loved being able to go in there, and even though she paid more for her groceries, she liked that she could just get in her, take her cart and just kind of walk around the store and not, bump into people and stuff like that. And so they did finally close because they just, they couldn't compete with the Market Basket because they were more expensive. And now it's a Whole Foods. So it's like kind of exactly what you're talking about, Brett. It's like, there goes the Shaw's and it's replaced. And so they have a Whole Foods there. My mom actually went to try it out, and she was just like, this is too much for me. So.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a Shaw's fan, you're probably not going to like Whole Foods.
Right.
See, I thought Market Basket was more of a Whole Foods type place, but I guess I'm wrong.
No, it's kind of more of a discount kind of. They have good. They have
how the deals.
Right. Yeah.
That's Ty's version of saying, "Why are we talking about video stores?"
No, that's fine. Grocery stores. Market Basket food. Just go right ahead.
But the funny thing too is that Market Basket never, at least the one there, didn't do the video rentals. It was only the Shaw's that did the video rentals.
Interesting. Yeah. So Shaw's had video rentals. Okay, I didn't know that.
You know what? I think maybe the Market Basket did too. I think it was the same thing where it was like the customer service desk had the videos, and you would take them out. Now that I think about it, I think they may have as well. It's such a strange phenomenon when we talk about it, right? This idea that grocery stores were in the video rental game, like that they.
I know. I still find that weird. I think it's funny. What did Shaw's have VHS and Market Basket had beta?
That would have been awesome. No. I think actually Shaw's was first, and I think Market Basket was like, well, we got to compete with Shaw's, and so and I don't remember ever renting a movie at either place. I just remember like if my mom was getting lottery tickets, I would like wander around and look at the movies and be like, oh, do I want that one, or maybe I should get this one sometime, or whatever. But I would always rent them in our hometown video store. I don't think I ever rented a movie there.
It's interesting. That's like an early version of showrooming.
Right.
You'd showroom them and then rent it somewhere else.
Yep. Showrooming's the best. Allegedly.
Well, it's amazing that Best Buy is still around, because people just walk through and then buy stuff elsewhere. But, since we're mentioning Best Buy, they didn't have a video store, but they had, when DVDs were first on the market, they had a really awesome DVD selection.
Explosion of DVDs. It was amazing.
And as did Borders.
Borders.
Which of course is now gone.
Of course it is.
Yeah, but then it's still hanging on. It's still.
Out of those, that's still hanging on. But yeah, I do remember that Best Buy would slowly phase out its DVDs.
Now this is a bunch of nothing. Just like a bunch of RoboCop remakes and Point Break remakes in a box.
Yeah, I remember somebody on Twitter, like fellow movie blogger for us, was on Twitter, and they posted pictures of of a flea market about 10 years ago or so, maybe even a little bit longer. And they had like Best Buy DVD, somebody was selling unopened Best Buy DVDs there. And that person was surmising at that time, like, I wonder if Best Buy is starting to cut their DVD stock. Because, how would this flea market person get all of the, unless they were, getting out of the back of a truck that it was hijacked or something, like in a movie or something. But it turned out that they were right, that they, what they were seeing at that flea market was the beginning of Best Buy not selling DVDs anymore. So it is interesting. I know we get Best Buy, like I got a router from Best Buy at some, and I think we got our TV from Best Buy, but it's kind of almost like, instead of like you talk about the showrooming, it's almost like we just kind of go on their website and see if they've got a better price on something and they can deliver it faster. That's really what it is. It's not like us going in there and being like, all right, well, we're trying to pick out a TV. Why don't you, Mr. Salesperson, tell us the best one, and we'll buy it. It's not really like that anymore.
No, it's not. But they also were in the movie game for a while.
And they had a lot of great DVDs to choose from. I do remember that B-Buy. That's fine.
But now it's kind of dead in there.
Yeah, it's a joke. Unfortunately,
I remember,
allegedly.
Like the last time we were there, it was like there's like no one there. It was pretty vacant. So because I remember I was looking for a record needle for my record player,
right.
and like
Find it.
Eventually, yes, but at a local record store. So
that's right. Yeah, they gave you on a wild goose chase at the Best Buy.
Yeah, they're like, yeah, it's over there. And I'm like walking around. There's no one there. There's no customers, no staff. I was just like on my own in the wild looking for this. Yeah,
it wasn't even there.
No. Oh, no. I found the area they were talking about, but the thing I was looking for wasn't there. But so
more like Best Lie.
And they used to have Best Buy exclusives. You can still find Best Buy exclusive stuff if you look for it.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing to think, right? Like, because we've sort of seen this whole like progression of retail. That like the video store I think is the most fascinating because I don't know, Brett too, if you maybe even Ty as well. Like, remember like in the '80s when there were waterbed stores in strip malls.
Oh, yes,
I remember that.
Yeah, and it's like, you think of that now, it's like the idea of waterbeds being so popular that there would be actual stores dedicated to selling waterbeds. But it's also crazy to think that the video store has turned into the waterbed store, right? Like we never saw that coming, that, videos would be waterbeds.
Yeah. Maybe it's now like CBD stores.
Right.
Like everywhere CBD, that now I guess is the hot thing. Then it gives someone a chance to open up their own small business, which I guess is a good thing. But
but it's always the CBD or Pocket Wireless or something. So it's just...
yeah, but then it comes and goes. Yeah, Pocket Wireless, which looked like a U, so we called it Pocket Wireless. Yeah, these sort of fly-by-night things. Yeah, that is interesting how it goes. But what's great about the video store is it gave, people the chance, an entrepreneur, to start their own business, relatively inexpensively, I would think, because all you have to do is get a space and fill it with VHS tapes. And these small companies would be releasing these movies because, any independent movie basically had a shot, if they could find the right distributor. And that is also fascinating. So these mom and pop stores would basically get these mom and pop movies, and you could discover so much and increase your knowledge and find these off the beaten track movies. And it was a great time. The 80s through like the late 90s was just an amazing time when it came to that.
Yeah, I never made the connection before, but because you guys have brought up multiple times, and I definitely agree with you that like kind of the best time for like, direct to video and bad action is kind of like mid 80s to late 80s, and we even think like PM Entertainment, like they have that sort of like that last gasp in the late 90s, but where they had some good stuff, but a lot of it was earlier. And I never really put that together, that also as the mom and pop stores start to get sort of forced out by the big chains like Blockbuster and whatnot, that of course those big chains had big deals with like the bigger production companies.
Exactly. Yep. That's why they have 400 copies of Sex and the City 2 and no copies of The Sweeper or something.
But that is interesting that sometimes you will hear someone say, that they found like a weird movie at a Blockbuster. I mean, maybe it's in different parts of the country, but like I've heard that in interviews or something. So how did you see? I don't even have an example, but like a weird horror action movie. They're like, oh, I saw it at a Blockbuster. Like you did, like because to me it's like they only had just this mainstream pap, as we call it. And so, but apparently some Blockbusters had some interesting titles. But but you're right. For the most part, it was big meets big, little meets little.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder, because I know you guys have talked about like, making purchases for the video store that you worked at. Yeah. I wonder if some of those Best Buy franchises had a little bit more leeway, and or maybe somebody ordered things.
Blockbuster?
Yeah, at a Blockbuster. Yeah, that was kind of like what you guys did with your place, where you could just order,
it must have been that. It must have been that. And because I think they would take in local, like, they would kind of subsume the local out of print, or I guess what am I trying to say? So when the local ones closed, they would get some of those tapes.
Right.
So it's not even that they ordered them. It's like they would actually get some tapes that were originally at a mom and pop, and they would just kind of throw them up on the shelf. I think that did happen in some instances, because they would want the stock and they would take the stock.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah. Especially because I think that was a lot of times what would happen is they would open up and, like that mom and pop place would close down, and they would just, they would go, or sometimes they wouldn't go, right? Sometimes they would open up nearby and just kind of run them out of business. But then it's like, we'll take their stock and
yeah, I think the smarter ones took the stock, because these Blockbusters, they're really big. They have a lot of floor space, much more than a lot of the mom and pops. So they actually had the shelf space where they could do that. So some of the better Blockbusters probably did. But yeah, so it's good that they did that. But and what was on the shelf is what they picked. I shudder to think what they didn't pick. They probably just like threw it in a dumpster or something.
I hope not.
Unfortunately, that's what Best Video did with lasers, though.
Oh, they threw away my lasers. Not that I have laser discs yet, but I'm not gonna say which ones I want, because someone might steal them. But online.
But there was an instance where Best Video would just threw out a whole bunch of laser discs
in the Big John dumpster. And
right. Yeah. They lost the format wars as well, and it was like, that, you're right. Like, I think that's the other thing too, right? Is you didn't see any value. I mean, even with VHSs, I mean, I think of like the VHSs that I let go to crap because, they weren't made well to begin with, but I didn't value them anymore. I was like, oh, well, DVD is, you never can. Right. I mean, I think one of the great things about your Instagram, Ty, is that I think for a lot of people, it kind of just seeing the picture of the VHS just kind of has like the whole thing of like going to the video store, seeing everything on the shelf like that, and being like, even if it's a genre that somebody's not interested in, it's just the idea of the box art and the idea
it's fun
of
to see
there.
The box art. That's why I love doing the page. I hope I don't run out of movies, because
I don't think you will.
No, I have too many, but I'm a little slow at watching them lately. But when they post Warbirds, so it's
that's a good one.
Joint. Yeah, I just watched that recently, so I got to post it. But Yuli Lamo, really silly movie. So it's like Top Gun, but not really.
Right. Yeah, one of those kinds.
It's a Yuli Lamo version of Top Gun.
Yeah, that's what it is. So
I like that.
It's a little bit more professional. I had the Vidmark, so.
Well, that's the thing. There are these companies like Vidmark and Prism and Magnum, Imperial, Paragon, all these great companies that sprung up.
Yeah, in the video store era. So it's like, hey, what's this? And then you kind of follow them a little bit, see what's coming out. It's great. It was just a great time, as Brett said.
Because they had trailers for their own releases, so you'd see.
Yeah, especially Prism.
Yeah, and now we have the internet. We can look more into some of this stuff. Back then, the only way to know what else is coming out on Prism is if you rent, because you're probably not going to buy a Prism tape, because they were $89.99, so they weren't priced for consumers.
Price higher,
yeah, but you could rent it for $2 or $3.
Yeah, and also too, I think now whenever we see these movies, I think one of the problems sometimes with Tubi and sometimes some of the other streaming services is like another distributor got the rights, and so they replaced those opening animations that those companies had. Because I think that's a big part of it, right? I mean, Canon's probably or PM are probably the two most cited, where it's like you're watching a movie and you see that logo pop up. But Imperial's one that I think about. Like when an Imperial movie, it's like you see that kind of the way that animation was for that.
You want that eye?
Yeah, it's like a moving eye with like a blue steel kind of trail
awesome.
to it.
Yeah. Even if the movie's bad, there's a certain like comfort to it. It's almost like a nice mac and cheese or some other comfort food.
I totally agree. I totally know what you're talking about. I couldn't agree more. And there are YouTube videos of compilations of VHS logo openings. Yeah. So if you're ever feeling especially nostalgic, you could go on and watch those. It shows that there are people that also care, but a lot of times they'd have a song like the Vidmark one, or
that's the thing. You pop in a Vidmark tape, like what, this is gonna be a good time. Even though the movie's not great, you got the Vidmark theme. So it's like, how do you not enjoy that? Yeah. You just kind of kick back with your popcorn or whatever,
and you watch a Vestron or a Lightning.
Vestron's another one.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can't believe we've already crossed the hour and a half mark here.
Wow.
I know, we went quick. Wow.
Well, time flies, when you're talking about counting crows.
Exactly.
Yeah, we're just counting the crows.
We're sitting here counting those crows. I mean, not to be confused with the black crows. Very different.
Right. Another, but at least they weren't an ING.
No.
Blacking crows?
I don't think that's a word, but okay. When they became jealous of Counting Crows' success at that moment, they made a bid to change it. Bid for seriousness.
The Blackening Crows, yeah.
Blackening Crows, yeah, that's better. That's actual word.
That's good. Yeah, but I mean, did you guys have any other kind of final thoughts on sort of your any stories that didn't come up or anything like that?
I think I'm fresh out. I kind of gave you everything I got. But yeah, I mean, but it was a great time. I do like going back and remembering it. Yeah, I think it's.
I think some more if you.
Yeah, if I can, we can talk about it next time because I'm sure we'll be talking again. But as of right now, I can't think of anything, and I think it's a good. But this is a good thing to do. I think to preserve these memories because there's a really good chance that in a couple of years I won't be able to remember some of this stuff. So at least there is a recording of this. So that's a good thing, and I just have a real fondness for video stores and that era and the box art and just going through those aisles. So I really enjoyed doing this.
And thanks for asking us to do it too, because we had you on for it. Now that's kind of cool. Kind of a switcheroo.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I think because we sometimes touch on these things, but I think it was really good to kind of let you guys, because I think like I said, I think you guys have doing a great job having other people on, to kind of spotlight it. But you guys also have your sort of your memories and personal experiences with that era. And so I think it's really cool to have you guys on here to talk about that.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thanks for having us on again. I guess, do you want to shoot up plugs or
plug away? Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Let's see.
Comeuppance.net.
Yeah, go ahead. You can do the plug.
Well, no, I mean, let's see. I'll do the ones I know, which are our website is comeuppancereviews.net, and our podcast is the Comeuppance Reviews podcast, and we're on pretty much all the podcatchers. I think Ty, you can do the other ones because those are more your domain.
Yeah. Well, there's the email, right?
Well, I mean, if you want to email us, it's crpodcast@yahoo.com.
Yeah, so the comeuppance.net thing is also on Facebook, and then Tie Action Rocks is my Instagram handle, and that's usually where you can find me because I basically live on there. And then I don't live at home; I live on Instagram.
You live on Instagram. You're like a lawnmower man. You're somewhere in cyberspace.
Yeah, I'm beyond cyberspace. I'm
AKA Job's War.
Why would they change it from Job's War to Beyond Cyberspace? Well,
is that the only time you can think of where they've changed a subtitle?
Because it was Job's War in the theater, and then it became Beyond Cyberspace in the video title, like we're trying to.
So it's like, because a lot of times they'll change a title, and there's various reasons for that, but changing a subtitle, I mean, why would they even?
In like a month span from the theater.
But anyway,
these are the plugs.
And we do have a Twitter, which usually we only use when we post a new yeah, Thai Comeuppance, which we pretty much only use when we post a new podcast, right?
Yeah,
Or do
or
we use it for other things? I don't know.
either for the review or the podcast. I wouldn't
Or the
call it
reviews, yes.
yeah, I would put the Comeuppance reviews as the handle on Twitter, but it wouldn't fit at the time. So it was like it was too many letters or whatever. So,
Well, comeuppance, some people think that's an unwieldy word, but I guess we're used to it by now.
yeah, we're used to it. So that's you'll get revenge or whatever.
Right, because the point of comeuppance isn't because you're giving the movies the comeuppance, it's because the baddie gets the comeuppance in the
Exactly.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I don't want people to think that we're just giving like bad reviews to everything. We do not do that. It's all about our love for the revenge movie.
Exactly. We're not a bunch of snarkos. So
No, we're our website, which people that have given us feedback on the website have noted how anti-snark we are. I mean, we
try not to be snarky.
We try to give just about everything the benefit of the doubt. I mean, we do have to tell the truth, and when something's not so hot, we have to say so. But we try to find the good in most things.
And we're the good and the bad, and we had the facts of life. So
well, yes, you sure do.
yeah,
But it's probably one of the more, I don't want to say positive review, but it's probably one of the more fair and even-handed sites, because our goal is not to be snarky. So I think people like that about the site.
And then, hey, you have plugs too, Matt. On your
I was
podcast.
going to say too. One of the things I think is always kind of funny is when I review a movie and I see that there's like limited critic reviews, but it's Comeuppance is one of them on there, and it's like, oh, and I think it's always kind of funny too if it's like you guys have reviewed it and Mitch has reviewed it, so it's like I'm almost like completing the triangle by
yeah, I love that.
Right.
Like Mitch,
well, it's a small but vibrant community.
Yeah, and so, but yeah, I think for anybody, if you're on IMDb and you see Comeuppance in the critics reviews, I think it's always worth checking out, just to kind of, I mean, for me, I sometimes will kind of see like what you guys thought before I write it, to kind of be like, yeah, that's a good point about that, and maybe I'll even mention it like in my review, like, oh yeah, Ty and Brett were saying this about the film and I kind of agreed with that, or that kind of thing.
Hey, I appreciate that.
Appreciate that, buddy.
Yeah. But I think you're right, because I think for me, I initially was like heavy duty snark, like when I first started the podcast, like the blog, and I was like, I've got to just, and I remember Mean Guns. I said that Mean Guns was, because I didn't know who Albert Pion was at the time, and I just like, this looks like it was directed by somebody who did a car commercial or something like that, and or it could have been directed better by somebody who did car commercials, something like that, thinking I'm so smart and great. And then later on, I'd reviewed some stuff from Albert Pion, and he was like, oh yeah, thank you for this, blah 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 blah. And then later on, he was like, hey, could you give Mean Guns another chance? I know you had trouble with it, but maybe give it another chance. And I read that review, and I was like, how did this guy even talk to me after I said this about the movie? I was like, so like kind of like just, like, I don't know if humbled is the right term, but I was just like, man, I should not have been, like, I was like, I mean, definitely movies of his that you could kind of take to task, but I probably could have taken them to task in better ways.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is, he's probably used to a lot of bad reviews. That's probably all he ever sees. I doubt he sees very much good reviews of his work. But that kind of ties it together, because he left a comment on when we reviewed, was it Cyborg, right, Ty?
Cyborg, yeah.
And he just said, I sure got my comeuppance.
Like, haha, very good, Al.
So he didn't ask us to rewatch it, thankfully, but I'm
not rewatching Cyborg.
But he did leave a comment and say, I sure got my comeuppance, which it kind of lends itself to that. But hey, he's reading our sites, so that's something.
I actually read it. That's nice of him.
Yeah. It's kind of amazing with that kind of thing. It is kind of, I think that's the thing for him, is I think he just liked the idea that we were out there talking about his movies, and he was gracious enough. And so, yeah, I remember there was a Fred Olen Ray one that it was like a movie that was essentially like how bad it was. The tone of the movie felt like, to me, was like it was bad that the Confederacy lost the Civil War. That was sort of the tone, and I was like, this is a disgrace. Like, this is horrible. You can't make a movie about this. I mean, like there's nothing good, whatever. And then I did another Fred Olen Ray movie, and he just commented like, it's nice to be known for something good or something like that. I was like, oh, he read that other one, didn't he? He's like.
Well, I mean, I know what you mean. I mean, I think when I came into Comeuppance Reviews, which Ty had started before me, I was like kind of too old for snark. I was kind of already past the snarky point. So, I didn't really have a snarky desire to do that. But yeah, so I think the people that we call celebrities, like in quotes, I guess, people involved with some of these movies, even if it's behind the scenes, a lot of times they will contribute something, and
nice.
Yeah, and it's nice to them that they even found us, in a lot of cases. So it's amazing. Some of the people that have said, "Oh yeah, I worked on this movie and this and this happened." I think it's awesome. It's so cool.
Great. Well, we'll have to drop some names in the next episode.
Yeah, we'll do that on another episode because this episode's getting a little long.
Yeah, we're kind of I know.
This is not our podcast, but it's so hard to tell these days. They blur together, like we were saying earlier.
I know exactly where. Yeah, that was kind of funny thing actually. Before I wrap up, is that I was reminding myself that I had to be the one to hit record because it was my podcast.
Yeah, I was thinking, do I do it? Does he do it? Yeah.
Exactly.
Nope, Matt is recording the call.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm glad.
Yeah, it told me to make sure I let everybody know that they were being recorded, which is it's kind of funny when we use Skype for that kind of thing, because it's like, let everybody know they're being recorded, and it's like, well, that was kind of the whole beginning of the episode.
Yeah, the whole point. Yeah,
I'm going to start the recording right now. And it's like,
well, plus there is a big banner at the top that says that you're recording it, so it's kind of hard to miss.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm looking at it right now. It's just,
yeah, you could see it right there, telling you. Yeah, so
it's becoming self-aware.
Right, exactly. It's sort of letting us all know. But yeah, so just quick plugs for me. The website, the same, dtvconnoisseur.blogspot.com. New novel out now, A Girl and a Gun. There's a link to it on my site, so you can just click on the link. It's like $5 on Kindle, I think, and 13 paperback. But Kindle works fine if you've got the Kindle and you want to pick it up there. I'm on the other ones, but I haven't been using Instagram as much as I used to. I go on pretty much just to chat with Ty and like your VHSs, and then maybe see if something else pops up to like. And that's kind of the extent of it. Yeah, and I mean, I also have to use it for work. Like work will post things and they want us to share them or whatever, and so I might do that too. But yeah, so it's kind of like I haven't posted a post on the DTV Connoisseur one in a long time, so maybe I'll start doing that again. But at least the blog I'm still kind of doing once a week. So.
Well, thanks again for having some.
Yeah, thanks, and I'm sure we'll be doing this again.
Yeah, we'll do Bolo Young.
Yeah, we're doing Bolo soon.
Probably next week. So
okay, perfect. Yeah, I've got the list almost set for that one.
Oh,
so.
okay.
Okay, good.
Good to go.
But I guess well, thanks again. So I guess thanks.
Thanks again, you guys, for coming on. This was a really great one. I really liked that conversation.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, maybe we'll revisit something like this in the future.
Sure. Look forward to it.
All right. Sounds good. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Hear that? That's the sound of a patient whose health data is protected from a cyber attack. And that's the sound of a financial system that's digitally secured from bad actors. Right now, there's an invisible war being fought on a digital battlefield that impacts what we do every day. That's why at Peraton, we do the can't be done to help protect the vital systems we rely on. Because if we don't, the alternative is unimaginable. Peraton.